Do you feel scared, worried, or concerned about the harmful rays of the sun? This show will help you to learn the hidden secrets and benefits of the sun for your mind, body, and spirit. Here's the big one, guys. Skin cancer. The studies show that the more sun exposure that you have, the less risk you have of getting melanoma. What? Your risk of developing melanoma is less the more sun exposure that you have. Like, mind blown.
That to a lot of people is going to be a shocker.
I know. Welcome everyone to the show. I'm Dr. Janine, and today we're talking all about the hidden secrets of the sun. I'm going to dispel a lot of the myths about the sun that you may have heard. I've got some shocking information about the sun. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the sun and sun worshiping, and we're going to talk beyond vitamin D. I know most of you have heard about the benefits of vitamin D in the sun. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the other benefits as well, like on the eyes, on the microbiome, even on having a long and healthy life. I'm going to look at the research with you, as well as talking about sunlight and how it really helps different disease processes. I'm also going to teach you how to make your own natural sunscreen, which is fantastic. You're going to love. So it's going to be a great show. Hello, Norm. Welcome.
Hello, Dr. Janine. I'm so excited about this show. There's a lot to take in there, right?
There is, and it's going to be so exciting. I've got some jaw-dropping information, Norm. It's even when I read about some of these things that certainly we've heard the opposite in the news and media about the sun, and everybody's scared about the sun. Yeah. It's just, you know, talking about mic drop. I mean, it's really incredible information that I'm going to be sharing.
Similar to last week with weight loss, which, by the way, I really enjoyed. So I know we've got a lot to cover in this week's session also with the sun. By the way, intermittent fasting. I did give that a shot.
How did it go?
You know what? I'm down one belt loop. I got to say, I'm pretty happy about that.
Already?
Yes.
Oh, that's what kills me about guys. You put a man on some kind of, you know, regimen for trying to lose weight, and a man is going to lose the weight just like this. And, you know, as women, it's a little bit more difficult for us, but that's fantastic.
We talked about that aspect last week, didn't we?
We did.
So why is it we're talking about the sun anyways? Don't we already know pretty much everything there is to know about the sun?
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a lot of myths, and I hope to dispel the myths about the sun today. Okay. Certainly the sun has a lot of healing properties, which we're going to talk about. And it's something that, you know, a lot of people don't realize, that the sun, beyond just the light and vitamin D, there's so many different healing properties and aspects of the sun that are so important for our overall health and for longevity. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this hour today.
Okay. And be sure while you're watching to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you get future notifications of the next show coming up. You can also watch past episodes on YouTube. So why is it we're talking about the sun? What don't we know?
So there's a lot of things that we don't know about the sun. Certainly we know that the sun provides two key things, and they are light, which we know, and heat as well. And there's different wavelengths of the sun, which is so important. So we have both short wavelengths of the sun rays, but also the longer ones. And the short has a lot to do with the UVA rays. And I'm sure you've heard about UVA, UVB. So UVA is the shorter wavelengths, and this can cause certainly aging, and because it penetrates more deeply into the skin, into the dermis, so the deeper layer of the skin. But also we have UVB, and the UVB is what actually causes sunburn. And this is the highest around midday, which we're going to talk about that. And this is hitting us at the higher level of the skin, at the epidermis. And there's also UVC, which is not really talked about. This is sort of captured in the Earth's atmosphere. So the UVC rays aren't really penetrating the Earth's surface. So we don't really hear as much about the UVC.
No, we hear UVA, UVB, UVC, like you said. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And we also have, so in the visible light spectrum, these are our medium wavelengths of the sun's rays. And this is where we see rainbows rainbows and which happens to be the colors when we talked about the chakras. So
Yes.
the colors of the rainbow in the visible light spectrum actually match the colors of the chakras in the exact same order. So again, Mother Nature in her wisdom always knew how to do things, and I just find it so fascinating when we talk about those connections in mind, body, and spirit, which of course we do in every show. So the long wavelengths, this is what produces heat, and this would be the infrared, the far infrared, and these have a lot of healing properties as well. So this is what's so incredible, is that actually 54% of the light that hits the earth is the far infrared. So we can't not talk about it, and it's so interesting to me that in the media, in articles, if you read anything about health, all we ever hear about is the UVA, UVB, the vitamin D, and how that affects our body in a positive and sometimes a negative way. But we're always not talking about the far infrared and the infrared spectrum of the sunlight, which is so important. And of course, that's why we're going to talk about it today in today's show.
You know what? I was thinking that some ancient civilizations must have known about this too. Sun worshipping, for example. What's the history behind all this?
Well, absolutely. And so when we're talking about the more spiritual aspects of the sun, certainly sun worshiping was something that was very common, and the sun was known to be a deity and not just an inanimate object, this fireball in the sky. The sun was always a source of wisdom, which is so interesting. But also we know that the sun god Ra in Egypt was said to be where all the descendants as the pharaohs came from the sun god Ra. And I just find it, and that's when you look at all of the ancient hieroglyphics, often we see the sun god Ra, which is so interesting.
Oh, wow.
Also, even in modern day now, the indigenous people in some regions, they still have their sun dances and they worship the sun, which is very interesting. And they have celebrations around the sun. And the sun, if you think about it, the sun symbolizes the harvest and the ability to have life. I mean, without the sun, if we didn't have the sun, you see these Armageddon types of movies without the sun. When the sun's gone, we're gone as well. So the benefits of the sun are so much more than certainly what we give it credit for. And even, believe this, so Christians, of course, they celebrate Christmas on December the 25th. And believe it or not, this was the feast of Sol Invictus. And it has a lot to do with the unconquered sun, and now this is celebrated by Christians as the birth of Christ. But it was, historically something,
totally different by the sounds of it.
completely different. So it just shows the magnitude of, the importance of the sun, and that's why we're talking about it today. For anybody who practices yoga, and I know that we talk about yoga in our shows, absolutely. And so when in most yoga, depending on the type and the style of yoga that you practice, most yoga sessions will start with something called the sun salutation, and this is called Surya Namaskar. And Surya was the sun god. And the sun salutation should actually be done, and historically has been done, as the sun is rising, and you do it facing the sun. And there's a spiritual connection then that we have to the sun. But when we show you the sun salutation, which we can see here, it's a series of 12 different postures. So first you start in Tadasana, then you do your forward bend, which we see here. Then you go down lower and Chaturanga, then you're looking up. This is called upward dog. Then we go down into the downward dog. So this series is very much practiced in yoga. In that series, always in that same sequence, and it's a great way, in most yoga classes or practices when you're doing your yoga, is that it's a great way to warm up the body. But to think that, historically it was saluting the sun, that just shows you, again, the importance of the sun.
Well, I guess the beginning of the day is the sunrise, which is the beginning of warming up the day. But what is the significance and some of the other benefits of the sunrise?
So the sunrise has a lot to do with waking up our body, just as as you would imagine. So when the sun comes up, I don't know about you, but when the sun comes up, my body wakes up. And that has a lot to do with circadian rhythm, so your body's biorhythm, and being healthy. You know, when I look at, and certainly you know that we've studied different centenarians around the world, that they wake up with the sun. And there's something about waking up with the sun, because historically when the sun's rays are up, we're waking up, and those blue rays, so it's in the area of 380 to about 500 nanometers, so that's the wavelength of the sun's rays as you're waking up in the morning, works on our body, and it does so by turning off our melatonin. So melatonin, of course, is our sleep hormone. That wavelength of light helps to work on our endocrine system. So it's very unique in the physiology how this is working. That shuts down the melatonin and helps to activate other hormones like cortisol, which is usually spikes at about 7:30 a.m. and that's our, let's get everything done hormone in early in the morning, but also our serotonin and our dopamine levels. And these are the hormones that have to do with feeling good. So you can appreciate that when your body clock is out of sync, what can be happening is that your hormonal flux and the way that your hormones are supposed to be secreted throughout the day, they have difficulty in doing so in a balanced way. And this is why you may be tired when you wake up. You don't wake up refreshed. Maybe you need the alarm clock to wake up. Nobody should really need an alarm clock to wake up. I mean, if you have a little bit of natural light coming into where you're sleeping in your bedroom, then it should be waking you up naturally because of those special wavelengths of that blue light early in the morning. So it really is fascinating. And there's, tips that we share in other episodes on YouTube. I want you to check them out, in terms of setting your circadian rhythm and how to get in sync and your body in sync with nature, because then your hormones work better. The way that you eat, your weight, and keeping your weight in a healthy way is definitely affected by this whole, and it revolves around the sun. It revolves really around nature.
That's amazing to me. When you say we really shouldn't need an alarm clock,
no.
I obviously have a lot to learn. But can the sun help people who might be feeling depressed?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So anybody who's ever suffered, I don't know if you're watching, if you've suffered from seasonal affective disorder, you know that the sun definitely affects you.
Right.
Certainly as you're watching these shows, please leave your questions and comments below, because we love to hear from you. And certainly we always will be able to reach out to you and get back to you, whether it's more privately, if you're direct messaging us on social media, or, if you feel comfortable on YouTube, and I know a lot of you do, you love to ask your questions, and we do get back, whether it's myself personally or a part of our team at Dr. Janine, we get back to you and we answer those more specific questions. But certainly depression is an area that I think is probably undervalued in terms of the benefits of the sun because of some of the myths that we're going to get to in this hour. So stay tuned right to the end of the show. I mean, some of those major myths that are out there about, the sun is bad, and that it, and the relationship with skin diseases and things. We're going to talk about all of that, and those are the cliffhangers that are coming. But it's incredible that the actual science behind the benefits of the sun and that natural sun exposure for our moods, for our serotonin levels, for helping with sleep. But certainly there's a lot of research that has gone into certainly vitamin D production and sunlight exposure, and that relationship with depression and low mood that is really, really promising. That I always recommend anybody who has low mood or you tend to be on the more depressed side, even if you're not diagnosed with depression, that you're seeking natural sunlight as much as you can, even in the darker winter months. Certainly anybody who lives above 35 degrees latitude is at risk for that deficiency of enough of that natural sunlight.
That's interesting. So it can depend on where you are in the world.
Absolutely.
Can it also depend on what time of day it is? Like, when's the best day part for us to get our vitamin D?
Yes. So the best time of day for your vitamin D is actually midday.
Midday?
Midday.
Okay, to me that's the hottest time of the day, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of what did you just say? I mean, when I am not frequently, I do a lot of research, I do a lot of work.
Right.
and I know a fair amount about,
Yeah.
you know, all things natural. Let's just put it that way. After, I've got years and years under my belt of being in the natural, being a naturopathic doctor, and certainly with formulation and of natural supplements and things. So I've done my due diligence.
And the books you've written and such.
Thanks for reminding me of
Plug.
I'm working on my third book now, but
congratulations.
Thank you, and in all of that research, there's relatively few times that I will kind of go, what?
Really? Yeah.
What? And this in the research, and the more recent research that I did, certainly knowing the benefits of the sun for years and years, but the more recent research that I did for this particular show on the benefits of the sun, I have to tell you that, like, mind blown. It's been crazy. And this is, yes, at the middle of the day, so at 12 noon, this is when you want to expose your skin to the sunlight. So my tip, now certainly there's caveats to this, and if you burn very easily, but my suggestion is at 12 noon to get 12 minutes of sun on your body, with about 12% of your body that is covered up.
12% of my body covered up. I'm trying to think of which parts. Okay.
So you choose where you're covered up. But yes, so 12.
12, 12, 12?
12, 12, 12. So 12 noon, you're going to get 12 minutes, and you're only going to cover up about 12% of your body, because you want to be getting enough of that natural sun exposure. And believe it or not, this will help with your vitamin D levels, but also when we get to the crux of, the matter when we're talking about disease prevention and even the skin diseases. Yes, we're going to talk about that you definitely, and not more than 12. Now, certainly you can work your way up, and that's the thing with sun exposure, and that's what the research has found as well, that the more that you're exposing yourself to the sun, the more tolerant your skin becomes to the sun, and the less risk of burning. And that's the crazy thing. And that's how God wanted us, Mother Nature wanted us to be able to adapt. It's all about adaptation, and a little bit of that natural sunlight is a fantastic thing to do.
This is quite amazing, because I'm learning more and more that a lot of what we've been told may not necessarily be true, like you were saying. And yet we've been conditioned to believe it, right?
Exactly.
Really.
Well, exactly. And another, so that I always like to talk about the microbiome.
Right.
So the microbiome, so research has now found that there's definitely a relationship between not only the skin microbiome and having an effect on the skin microbiome when we expose our skin to that natural sunlight, but also to the gut microbiome.
Okay.
So the gut microbiome is modulated by having enough natural sun exposure. So again, incredible. So, and here's another tidbit, an interesting fact, is that tomatoes. So if you consume tomatoes...
You mean tomatoes?
Tomatoes, tomatoes.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah, good one, Norm. Yes, exactly. So the tomatoes actually contain lycopene, and lycopene is a natural antioxidant that helps to reduce your risk of burning. So it really helps with sun tanning, because it reduces that risk of sunburning. And because now, again, sunburning is a reaction, and you have a lot of free radicals that are formed, and that's why we know it's not good to overdo it with aging, and when we're protecting our skin, that we don't want to overdo it, absolutely, to protect from getting the wrinkles. But the lycopene actually from the tomatoes helps to produce the melanin in your skin, so actually helps with the sun tanning aspect of the melanocytes, and also because of the lycopene also is protective against those free radical, those oxygen species. So I mean, that's a great tip. So I know a lot of people that live in countries that there's a lot of sun exposure, they inherently eat and grow a lot of tomatoes. I mean, it's, again, Mother Nature in her wisdom knows exactly what she's doing.
I love it. I don't need another excuse to enjoy tomatoes or tomato sauce and such too. So what I really want to hear is your take on sunscreen.
Yes, so that's a great question, and there's definitely controversy around sunscreen. Certainly, there are a lot of ingredients in sunscreens that are not healthy, and nanoparticles is one whole issue in terms of the environment. So that's one thing to stay away from. PABA as well as another ingredient and oxybenzone. There's so many different ingredients, and this is certainly something that you want to avoid, and that's why I've never really recommended using conventional sunscreens that you purchase, and it's a huge industry. Like I'm telling, huge industry, and there's, you know, people talk about, you know, the negative aspects of that industry. But there are natural ways, and I'm going to share a fantastic recipe in just a second. They're natural. You can make your own natural sunscreen. What the SPF means is that you can prolong your exposure, and the SPF number, as it goes up, it means that depending on your skin type, you are allowed to and can safely stay in the sun for an extended period of time.
So that's sun protection factor, SPF.
Exactly.
And
well, yes, and depending on your skin type will allow you to stay out for longer periods of time. So the higher the number, the longer you're supposed to be able to stay out. Now, the caveat of this is that, unfortunately, it gives people a false sense of security. So they slather on the sunscreen and thinking, oh, I'm good, but you have to reapply it every 90 minutes. And the SPF also is not so, and this is where the industry comes into play, because what's crazy is that the SPF number, after about 15, you're not getting added really protection. So you could be sold a bottle of SPF 100 for a huge amount of dollars.
Sure.
And it's not going to give you much more than the SPF 15. So at SPF 15,
really?
yeah.
Hold on. SPF 15.
Yes.
SPF 30, SPF 45, there's SPF 100, but there's very little differences, you're saying, really?
Exactly, because SPF 15 is only about 94% of the UV protection. When you jump to 30, it's about 97%, so not a huge, like you're still in the 90th percentiles here. And from 30 SPF to 45 SPF, you're only jumping up 1%, 98% protection, added protection.
You know what? Because when you go from 30 to 45, you think, well, that's 50% more.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's a huge misconception. So there you go. If you didn't know that.
This is a real eye-opener.
It really is. And that's where I mean, it's all, and people don't always love the fact that I tell the truth, but I tell the truth.
I love that you tell the truth.
Because a lot of people have thought, and, you know, until maybe listening to today's show, you know, thought and have bought into those misconceptions around the sun. And, you know, there are a lot of natural ingredients actually that have natural SPF. So one of them that I love is almond oil.
Really?
Naturally has an SPF of about 5. Coconut oil is about 4 to 6. And when I first learned of this from someone who lives in Central America, he said, yeah, coconut oil, that's all I use on my skin because it has a natural SPF. And I had to look it up. I didn't believe him, to be honest. I said, okay, really? And yeah, sure enough. So SPF of 4 to 6 for the coconut oil, zinc oxide, which we know. So as a kid, I don't know if you did, I would be out on the lake.
I rarely wore protection, sun protection
no?
as a kid. It wasn't the thing to
It wasn't,
do.
no.
You know what I mean?
But for myself, as a kid, I was on the lake, on Lake Ontario. Yes, we are Canadian, and in the summers would be out sailing a lot and did sailing lessons and things. And we would use the zinc oxide cream certainly on the parts, because we were out all day and on the water. We know the reflection that you get, you know, extra UVA and UVB rays. So we had to protect ourselves. So we would, and I know that this is a thing in Australia too, because of the hole in the ozone and, you know, having a lot of UVA and UVB damage.
Well, the sun has become harsher, hasn't it?
Yes.
Or the sun hasn't become harsher. What is it then? We've created a harshness.
Yes, and
more so.
Certainly because of the ozone. So the integrity of the ozone is compromised, and in different parts of the world this is worse, certainly. But you know, what's incredible is that there's other, you know, natural ingredients that who knew that you could use coconut oil. Red raspberry seed oil has the SPF of 25 to 50 depending on the concentration. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And carrot seed oil, because think of the antioxidants. So vitamin A and vitamin C, when you think carrots, vitamin A and C are natural SPFs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why
amazing.
the carrot seed oil is about SPF 35 to 40, which is incredible. And shea butter as well has the SPF of about 6 to 10. So why
incredible.
Don't we? I
so
know.
many options, so many natural alternatives.
Exactly. So we're going to mix up some sunscreen. So we're going to do it right now, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. It's so easy to do. You can find all of these ingredients and mix them up yourself without any of those negative, you know, side effects and none of those chemicals that really shouldn't be in your sunscreen. We're going to do an all-natural one. So mixing up our own sunscreen. So first we have some zinc oxide.
You know what? This wooden spoon was my mother's weapon of choice on me and my brother and my sister, so it kind of scares me. Okay, zinc oxide.
Zinc oxide, which you can purchase online. We also have some carrot seed oil. And again, this SPF is over 30 on the carrot seed oil.
That's incredible to me. Go on.
And some raspberry seed oil, which has an SPF of about 30 plus. Some shea butter, and this is about a quarter cup of shea butter, which is natural and it's really nice on the skin. We have some coconut oil, again, natural SPF. And we have our jojoba oil. And that we are going to combine together, and this now makes your natural sunscreen. And then you can keep this in a jar, and you can use this whenever you need it. So we're going to incorporate that. And what I would do if I wasn't here would be to use my hand mixer and allow it to really incorporate together, and it becomes nice and smooth and creamy. And then put that into my jar, and then you can apply that. But you can already see that because of that zinc oxide, you can see that it has that skin blocking ability. And I'm just going to put just a tad on my hand.
Yeah, I want to try that too, actually.
You can see it's very nourishing to the skin.
Ooh,
but you
can
see,
yeah, it's lovely.
Isn't
really
it nice?
Smooth and light, yes.
Yeah, and you can even add
feels
a couple
like skincare, honestly.
It really does. And again, completely natural. There's no harsh ingredients in here, and nothing that we have to worry about damaging to, the oceans and the coral and everything else. So really a fantastic way, especially if you're going to have prolonged exposure to the sun and you need to protect yourself, and certainly in your exposed parts. And this is fantastic for the face as well, because we know that the photo damage and the wrinkling that can be caused by too much sun exposure is really important.
We thank you for tuning in and watching us, the Dr. Janine Show. And make sure you like and subscribe and click that bell for future notifications of the next show coming. Now, we're talking about a lot of things to do with the sun, ancient secrets of the sun. And one of the first things I think of, Dr. Janine, are my eyes. And I want to know what your view, if you get the little pun there, is on sunglasses.
So sunglasses, yes, where we may have thought or have heard that we always should be wearing sunglasses to protect our eyes. The truth is that wearing sunglasses all the time is probably not the best idea for your health. So certainly in the morning, in the early rays of the morning, we want that natural and those blue light rays to come into the eyes to a certain degree to help to wake us up. So we don't want to necessarily be wearing our sunglasses all the time. Now in the middle of the day, we definitely want to get a little bit of natural sunlight exposure in the eyes, and we want to close our eyes. And this is one of the most healing things that you can do for your eyes, is to close your eyes so that your eyelids are covering and protecting your eyes, and just turn your head slightly. So if I'm looking at this bright light here, if that's my sun, I just turn my head slightly, and it's called sunning of the eyes. That allows, with the protection of your eyelid, for those healing rays from the sun to go into the eyes. And this is incredible for vision.
That's interesting. Even with our eyes closed, the sun is still able to penetrate.
Absolutely,
get through.
And it's so interesting. And I've talked to a few people, in the last couple of weeks about this. And I don't know about you. Tell me. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But when I was a kid, I used to do this. Naturally, I would always do this. Just close my eyes and allow for those sunbeams just to penetrate my eyelids. And I just think it's fascinating. So I don't know. Did you ever do that as a kid?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so anyway.
So it's so fascinating to me that something, I think as kids we're very intuitive and we sort of know what's good for us. And to be able to look back now that I was able to do, and do that sunning for my eyes without even knowing, until later in life and being a naturopathic doctor, that it's very healing to the eyes. So if you've got compromised vision, then use the sunlight to do that, and just make sure that you're still moving or oscillating your head so that that bright, heat and sunlight isn't coming into that one spot of your eyes, even though your eyelids are there, and not for very long. I'm talking like 30 seconds, but a great way to have that healing effect on the eyes. And I've, as I've been doing this for the last few weeks with our hotter summer here now in Canada, I've noticed that my eyesight is actually improved. I mean, to me, it's incredible that in such a short amount of time that it really has that validity. So I want you to try it, and I'd love to hear how it's working for you.
I can't wait to try that.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I think it's so cool.
If I'm able to maybe see better and feel better about my life and such, I mean, and we talked about depression, does that mean that the sun can actually help me live longer?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of research goes into certainly longevity and the benefits of, having that sunlight exposure. Also for kids' health. So when we talk about children, I have a study actually that has proven, and they looked at children in Australia, but also in Singapore, with kids who had myopia, which is nearsightedness, and they found that the participants in the study who spent more time outdoors were much less likely to be myopic and have that nearsightedness, which is the inability to see far. So that's incredible. So whether it had to do with coming out of the dark homes and off the video games and getting out, they did not wear sunglasses, so that's interesting. So in the study, they had that full light exposure, but the ability to have that effect of being outdoors and certainly fresh air, I'm sure, had something to do with it. But to be able to have that exposure of the natural sunlight getting into the eyes was so helpful for vision in the children, which is remarkable. And coming back to your question about longevity, certainly there's a lot of relevance in terms of using the sun as a longevity tool. And certainly in the centenarians that I visited in different parts of the world, who just happen to be in sunspots in places in warmer temperate climates, that it was definitely a correlation, and they follow the sun. So waking up, as we said earlier in today's program, waking up with the sun and setting the circadian rhythm is definitely part of it, but also they would limit their exposure a little bit in the midday when it was super hot, and because they couldn't work. I mean, in that midday sun, and as much as I said, yes, we have to get our 12 minutes, if you've not been in the sun at all, we want to get your vitamin D status. The fastest way to do it is 12 minutes at 12 noon, and that's it. So limiting the exposure around the midday so that you're not overdoing it with the UVA and UVB rays. But then certainly as the day goes on, that limited exposure we want to extend a little bit, because it's now the infrared, the far infrared, the red light therapy that you can get from the sun has really healing effects as well. So that's, in terms of longevity, always look to the people that live the longest and what do they do. And sun exposure is such a huge part of their lives that, how could we not pay attention to that?
So true. We can learn so much from these people, can't we? The centenarians, the people you've met in your travels, some of your travels.
Yes.
And through that we learn from you as well as you pass on the information and study it first, though, I know, which is amazing. Now, we've talked about different day parts and such, but why is it when it comes to sunsets, why are we drawn to a sunset? Everybody loves a sunset. Oh, look, a sunset. Why are we like that?
Well, such a great, thing. If you think about it, why are we drawn? I'm drawn I love sunsets, and I know that you do as well. And it's at the sunset, this is where the different rays of lights are coming now from the sun. So whether it's the red light, the infrared, and the far infrared, these are very healing in terms of the overall body, and that heat that comes from that sun, that setting, is very healing to the body. So if you can do, and this is what we try to do when we're away at a sunny destination and hopefully there's a beach, because I've got to have my beach, that you go for that long walk at sunset and you allow for those rays. Now I'm going to kick it up a notch, ladies. So if you've got cellulite, so what I do is I consciously, and you don't have to listen to this part.
No, I'm
because
not.
I know
No,
you're a
la,
guy,
la,
and
la,
guys
la.
don't get cellulite.
La,
but
la, la,
yeah.
la.
So what you do is you walk with, you're going to think I'm crazy with it. Now, I can't even believe it's coming out of my mouth that I'm actually saying this, but I'm sharing it. So you walk to help to prevent or keep the cellulite away. You walk with your backside to the sun that's setting, and those red and infrared rays that are coming at you are helping to heal that cellulite. There, I said it.
That is unbelievable to me.
I know, isn't it
So
great?
you're going to have a lot of people doing the moonwalk towards the sunset.
Yes.
Going forward.
Well, their backside towards the sunset,
Yeah.
yes.
That's great. I love it. Now, generally speaking, though,
Yes.
Dr. Janine, in the media and elsewhere, we keep hearing that sun can actually cause problems, cause disease,
Yes.
actually. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so here's the big thing. And the media has had a heyday with this over the years.
Yeah.
And certainly there's a lot of diseases that have been proven, I'm going to share just a few of them now, to be helped by the sun. And the big ones, I mean, we're talking the big ones here. So let me just go to my research,
Sure.
whether it is the asthma. So it's been proven to help with asthma, with type 2 diabetes, with Crohn's disease.
Really? Okay.
Heart disease and cardiovascular issues, especially in women with their venous circulation, so the leg circulation.
Okay.
Immune system, we know that this is super important, and I know there was a big uproar with, quarantine and
Yeah.
a lot of evidence being covered up and not talked about it in mainstream news,
Sure.
with people being indoors and why it's so important to get outside
Yeah.
as much as you can to help with your immune system. So that's over the top important, but also MS, osteoporosis, breast cancer, so specific. I mean, I have a handful of studies here that the research has showed the preventative, and even a Canadian study. So we're here in Canada, and as a Canadian woman myself, and who lost my mom to breast cancer.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear
thank
that.
you. That this was really interesting to me, that they researched Canadian women and found that the higher amount of sun exposure, the more preventative it was for developing breast cancer. And the
What?
and the,
Really?
Yes. What?
That sounds,
Yes.
that almost seems to go against everything we've ever been able to
I know.
believe, right?
I know. And that's when I said at the top of the show that there's going to be some like, huh? What?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Yeah, that's one of them. So,
Oh, man.
close and dear to my heart after losing my mom to breast cancer, that certainly sun exposure is a huge part of, and it's more than just the vitamin D. It's so much more than that. It has a lot to do with our immunity. Again, what we said at the top of the show with the microbiome and having a positive impact on our gut ecology and the microbiome, that's really important as well to get that natural sun exposure. So that just goes to show you, and that different types, and certainly for helping with vision, with
Yeah.
MS as well, endometrial issues,
Wow.
and osteoporosis, because we know that certainly the vitamin D and absorbing that vitamin D from the sun is really important, but also to help, and we need the vitamin D to make sure that our calcium is going into our bones to keep our bones nice and strong. So yes, but here's the big one, guys. Skin cancer.
Well, that's the one that we hear of the most.
Yes. So the studies show, and I have a few of them here, the studies show, believe it or not, that the more sun exposure that you have, the less risk you have of getting melanoma.
What? Wait.
Yes.
That to a lot of people is going to be a shocker.
I know. And I couldn't make this stuff up if I wanted to, Norm. I mean, this was one of those ones when I was like in the office and I'm doing my research and I said it to some of our staff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what? What did you say? And I had to repeat myself. Yes. So your risk of melanoma, which is the most serious, we know, form of cancer, skin cancer, your risk of developing melanoma is less the more sun exposure that you have. Now, certainly I'm not saying to go and bake yourself in the sun.
Right.
That is, you have to really look. If you're interested in this at all, you really have to look at and read the studies appropriately.
Yep.
But for example, the avoidance of sun exposure as a risk factor for major causes of death. So this is what they found, was that non-smokers, so listen to this, Norm.
Yes.
Non-smokers who avoided sun exposure.
Right.
So you're doing everything right.
Right.
You're not smoking, you're staying out of the sun like you're
Right.
told.
Covering
right?
up like I'm supposed to.
Yes. Had a life expectancy similar to smokers in the highest sun exposure group.
Are you serious, really?
I'm serious.
That's wild. I can't imagine that.
Exactly. So imagine you're out there on the beach with your cigarette,
Yeah.
like we see people in southern parts of Europe, right?
old
Enjoying
stogie.
in the good old days, out on the beach, baking themselves with a nice suntan and their cigarettes.
Oh, man.
And same. So what does that tell you? That's just one. There's another one that said people who receive more than 5 hours of sunlight exposure on the weekends have a reduced risk of melanoma of 33%.
That's huge.
Compared to those who receive less than 4 hours per day.
That's amazing to me.
I'm telling you. And now sunscreen. So coming back to the whole sunscreens thing, that here's the big question in the letter to the editor, could sunscreens increase the melanoma risk?
Right.
Could they increase your risk? And 2 studies suggest that sunscreens may not be effective in preventing skin cancer. A large case control study showed that higher risks of melanoma in men who used sunscreens.
Yes.
And a large prospective study showed a higher incidence of basal cell carcinoma in women who used sunscreens. I mean,
Oh,
crazy.
no.
This is crazy.
That's horrible.
So,
It's like we're doing it to ourselves a little bit.
yes,
Right.
and that's why, in some countries, the risk of developing melanoma, some countries, down under, just saying, where the whole campaign, they have campaigns around slip, slop, slap, put it on, protect yourself. And I'm not saying that that's not the right thing. What I'm saying is that you have to be mindful. You can't put on sunscreen and have a false sense of security thinking you can be out all day. You have to be sensible. You have to get some natural sunlight exposure. You've got to get that vitamin D going for your immune system. You want to, cover up after you've had too much sun exposure. You have to be sensible about this, but you have to get some sun, and that's my whole point.
And using the right sunscreen.
Yes.
Like you showed us with
Exactly.
the recipe, right?
If you're going to be exposed for more than what your skin type can handle, you're going to use a natural sunscreen and cover up the parts, or cover up. I mean, use clothing to cover up so that you're protecting yourself, so that you don't burn. You never want to burn, absolutely, but you definitely want to get some natural sun exposure. Please, if you've not been out in the sun, you've got to get some natural sun exposure. It's so, so important for your overall health.
An incredible show. We've learned so much. But now it brings us to one of my favorite parts in the show, and that is the Dr. Janine truth about the hidden secrets of the sun. What do you say about that?
Yes, so the Dr. Janine truth for the hidden secrets of the sun is to get some natural sun exposure. And I really want you to use your intuition. Our body knows, and our body has chemical signals that are happening, and the vitamin D is like a chemical signal between the skin, and historically they found this in the science now, that's the signal between the skin and our body on the outside getting that sunlight exposure. Then the vitamin D sends that signal to our internal organs, which wouldn't know otherwise if you've had that sunlight exposure or not. So there's a whole concert of things that are happening when we expose our body to that natural sunlight. It's so important to use your intuition. So once you've had enough, you don't want to get to the point of burning. Please do not fall asleep in the sun, but you definitely want to get enough of that healthy sun exposure so that you can have that positive impact on your overall health. And use your intuition. When enough is enough, you got to get out and you got to cover up, and you go indoors or you cover up your skin so that your limit for the day is done. And everybody has a daily limit. Here's the thing, everybody's daily limit is different. So you've got to really pay attention to your own body, tune in and take a look and learn what's right for you.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. But when you say don't fall asleep in the sun,
Yes.
you know what I think of? I think of animals, pets,
Yes.
dogs and cats, typically falling asleep in the sun. Cats, on the windowsill, the dog's right on that spot in the carpet where it's all sunny.
Yes.
Do our pets need sun? Is it healthy for them also?
They do, and that's why your pets are seeking that sunny spot in the house or outside. Our Jasper, he goes out on the porch and he sunbathes, but he knows. He knows when he's had enough, and he'll come inside. And yes, again, following nature, animals do it. Why? Because they need the vitamin D as well, amongst other healing properties of the sun. So it's really important, yes, that your pets are seeking that sun and allowed to have that sunlight as well.
So we've talked about sunscreen, we've talked about different day parts and such, but what about after sun care? What can we do about that?
Yes, so we will be sharing, so make sure you're following us on social media. We're going to be sharing some fantastic after sun care recipes. So it's something that we have mixed up, and again,
good.
completely natural ingredients that you can use. Now, if you have overexposed yourself and you've got
Yeah.
a little bit more sun than what you were expecting, then you can use a nice cooling gel that we have created here at the Dr. Janine Show. But also, we have a nice after sun lotion, so helping to prolong your tan, because we know, for those of the tanners out there, you know that it's the lack of moisture that the suntan goes away more quickly, so you want to maintain that moisture in the skin, and you'll love the way that it looks and it feels. And again, there's no negative, no chemical properties or chemical components in these creams and lotions that we create, and you'll absolutely love that, because again, then your body doesn't have to detoxify all those chemicals that you may be slathering on your skin if you're using conventional ways to moisturize, or even, you know, when we're talking about sunscreen for that matter.
You know, in case you miss anything, make sure you follow us or follow Dr. Janine, of course, either on Instagram at Dr. Janine, DoctorJanine. And like she was saying, you'll see those recipes posted there once again on Instagram at Dr. Janine. And of course, you can look at us on YouTube, where you'll see some of the past episodes. But if you're watching right now on Facebook Live or anytime, you can like and subscribe and click that bell for future notifications of the next show coming up. A very, very busy show.
Yeah,
Right?
we talked about a lot today. So today we talked about,
what
you
did we-
know,
what
in
did
case
we
you
look at everything
missed
we
it and
talked
you've
about
got to
here?
scroll back,
Oh.
we talked about the hidden secrets of the sun. So certainly a little bit of the history of the sun. We talked about natural sunscreen, why it's important to get natural sun exposure, why it's important for our eyes as well,
Yes.
and how to do it. So we shared earlier in the show how to go out at noon, so that part of the day.
12,
and
12, 12.
12, 12, 12, that's the formula to get that natural sun exposure and to really help not only your immune system. So I know if you're watching, if you're suffering maybe low mood or
Right.
depression or anxiety, you've got to get that natural sunlight. It's really going to help you. Maybe you have a disease condition that's happening in your, and you've been diagnosed with something, then I certainly want you to get that natural sunlight. And the history books show that this was, one of the treatments of choice. So even back in 1903, Dr. Finson got the Nobel Prize in medicine for exposing patients to natural sunlight as a healing modality for tuberculosis on the skin.
Wow.
And he also was using light rays to help with smallpox. I mean, so this is all in the history books, and where we've come away from all the benefits of that natural sun exposure. I think we dispelled a lot of those myths in today's show, which was fantastic.
Fantastic. I really believe that. There's so much in here. And it makes me want to watch the show over again, as well as determine which 12% of my body I need to cover for my 12, 12, 12. But what's coming up next week?
So next week we're talking about the hidden secrets of detoxifying. We're talking about detoxification of the mind, the body, and of course the spirit as well. We couldn't have a show without talking about the spiritual aspects of healing and detoxifying as well. It's going to be a great show. Thanks for joining us today. It was a fantastic hour. If you've got those questions and comments, I'd love to hear from you, and be sure to follow us as well.
Yeah, indeed. Follow us, of course, and watch and leave those comments and questions for next week about detoxifying too, which will be very important. Dr. Janine will be online during the show too. Have a great week, and thank you so much for watching.
Thanks everyone. We'll see you next week.